Hello, good evening. I'm so excited to see many old friends and meeting new friends. For those who we have not met, and my name is Chen Sen, co-chief curator, art and cultural, and the senior curators of Chinese art and cultural. I've been at RAM for 28 years. Hello, okay. Anyway, so before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that this museum sits on the ancestral lands of Wendat, Haudenosaunee confederacies, and Anishinaabe Nation, including the Mississaugas of Credit First Nation, who are the original stewards of this land from the time immemorial to today. This land has been a meeting place of diverse peoples for generations, and I am grateful to be here with you tonight, continuing this long tradition. So, welcome everyone again to the talk, From the Bone to the Paper, celebrating the traditions and innovations in Chinese calligraphy, which trace the history of Chinese writing. This is the latest in a long lines of public talks that supports RAM extremely large of the important collection of antiquities and arts from ancient to modern China. RAM's Chinese collection ranks the largest one in North America and second to the British Museum outside of China. I keep saying that because I'm so proud of that. I encourage each of you to spend sometimes in our Chinese galleries on your next visits to the RAM. Unfortunately, tonight, we closed the gallery. I'm sure you have a chance of coming back, but we have a sneak peek something for you after the talk. So before we begin, kindly ensure that your phones and other devices are turned to the silent. I was instructed to say that. All right, so now it's my pleasure to introduce my dear colleagues, Dr. Wenchen Zheng, who will speak briefly about exciting a new acquisition to our Chinese collection, adding to what we have the best and the largest in North America, some of which will be previewed in the theater lobby, just the place you're walking after tonight's talk. Dr. Zheng joined the RAMS in October 2011 as the Louis Hollystone Chair of East Asian Art. She is also affiliated faculty, a professor at the University of Toronto Department of East Asian Studies. Her PhD is in the history of art from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Her major areas of research is pre-modern Chinese painting, including the subject of the Song Dynasty painting, images of women and ancestral portraits and prints in the later imperial dynasty. So let's welcome Dr. Zheng come to stage.
Thank you, Chen, for your opening remark and the kind introduction. So good evening and welcome everyone. Despite the weather, I heard it's raining, pouring, and very windy like a typhoon, but you are still here. So I'm very delighted and thrilled that we get together, weather the weather tonight. Okay, as Dr. Sen mentioned, we are delighted to present a small display related to Chinese writing and calligraphy from the RAM collections in conjunction with today's talk. This display located just outside the lecture hall, which some of you might have noticed there's already a case there, and there will be more we'll bring out after the lecture. So it features several pieces from our most recent acquisition, the Wang family collection of Chinese painting and calligraphy, which consists 58 pieces from the 17th century to the early Republican era. So allow me to briefly introduce this collection to you. The Wang family collection was assembled by Mr. Yingpu Huang Huang Yingpu, a native of Guangzhou, China. Mr. Huang was a passionate lifelong collector of the Chinese paintings, calligraphy, and rare books. As one of the first the recipients of the Boxer Indemnity Scholarship Program, 庚子赔款奖学金, he studied at the Columbia University in New York, earning BS and MS degrees in business in 1924 and 1925, respectively. After returning to China, Mr. Huang taught at the Zhongshan University in Guangzhou and served in the government finance during the first half of the 20th century. He was well connected with the cultural elite, particularly in the Guangdong province. Driven by his deep appreciation for the Chinese art, he actively acquired artworks from notable painters, calligraphers, and scholars. He named his collection Wholes of Reminiscence of the Jiangnan, Yijiangnan Guan, and once published an extensive selection from his collection. Mr. Huang and his family moved to Hong Kong in 1948, and in the late 1960s, they immigrated to Canada, and subsequently brought the collection with them. Dr. Zhou Yong Wang, Mr. Huang's eldest son, and the professor emeritus in the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering at the Carleton University, generously donated the 55 pieces from the Wang family collection to RANG in 2023 and 2024. And we're very delighted that Mr. Wang and his family are with us today. Yes, thank you so much. Actually, three generations of the Wang family are all here. Thank you so much again for your generous donation. The collection includes works from the Lei Ming and the Qing periods, as well as pieces by esteemed artists from the early Republican era, such as Huang Junbi. Here on the screen, I'm showing you the fan painting by Huang Junbi. And Zhao Shaoang, also Zhang Jie, also known as Zhang Jizhi, and Ye Gongcuo. Many of them created artwork for Mr. Wang as a friend instead of a client. In addition, these artists also create artwork for other members of the Wang family on special occasions. For example, on the screen, the painting on the left is a painting done by Shang Yanliu, made this as a gift, a congratulation gift for Mr. Wang's marriage. I think it's in 1967. So due to the space limitations, only a small collection of the collection is on display here. So we hope in the future we will have chances to display more. It's particularly challenging to display hanging scroll in this, not the gallery space. So I selected a few on the screen to show you. In the middle, particularly this hanging scroll, we will see partial scroll outside. So I want to show you its entirety here, the middle one here. So there will be also other 5 smaller pieces on display after the lecture. So we encourage you to stay and view them outside the lecture hall after the talk. So now I'd like to introduce Ron's guest, who will be speaking in more depth about the long history of writing in China. Dr. Hui-Wen Lu is a professor from Taiwan. I also originally came from Taiwan, so I feel particularly honored to have her here. She's currently in North America as a visiting scholar in the Department of Art and Archaeology at Princeton University this spring. So that's why we are so lucky to be able to invite her to here in Toronto as her semester just ended. So Dr. Lu is a professor and the chair of the Graduate Institute of Art History at the National Taiwan University. Her field of specialty is the history of calligraphy and painting in pre-modern China. She published in both Chinese and English. Her current book project examines the first widespread search of calligraphy model book publication in China from the 11th to the end of the 13th century, and its impact on the reformation of the calligraphy canon. In recent years, she also directs her attention to contemporary calligraphy and the calligraphers. She's currently leading a research project on women calligraphers in Taiwan and beyond, which includes extensive interviews and an international exhibition scheduled to open in fall 2025 in Taipei, Taiwan. So please join me to welcome Dr. Hui-Wen Lu to the stage.
First and foremost, I would like to thank the Royal Ontario Museum for inviting me. It is a world-renowned institution known for its large and diverse collection of global art. It also holds a very special place. It is also celebrated for its significant collection of Chinese art assembled in the early 20th century, which holds a very special place in the field of Chinese art history. I would also especially like to thank Dr. Shen and Dr. Chen for their hospitality. And it's truly wonderful to see such a large audience here. Thank you. Okay. Chinese characters and writing lie at the heart of Chinese civilization and cultural development, with the art of calligraphy standing as one of its most revered artistic traditions. Calligraphy lacks representational function, yet it is also cannot be categorized as graphic art, making it very difficult to find an equivalent within Western art categories. My talk today, titled From Bone to Paper, Tradition and Innovation in Chinese Calligraphy, will serve as a very basic introduction to the history of Chinese calligraphy. I will begin with the oracle bone inscriptions from around 3,000 years ago and trace the development of calligraphy to contemporary practices. Okay. So here we see there are 5 major script types in Chinese writing. So we have the seal script, the clerical script, the standard cursive, the standard and running scripts. Before the seal script, so the third one on the right, from the left, before the seal script, there were oracle bone inscriptions and bronze inscriptions, which represent early stages of Chinese writing before characters became fully standardized. Take this character mu, or tree, for example. On the screen, you can see how this single character appears in different script types. So in oracle bones, the first on the left, and bronze inscriptions, the second on the right, from the left, the character resembles a drawing of a tree trunk and branches. In the seal script, the third one, from 3rd century BC, the form becomes more standardized with balanced horizontal and vertical strokes. And then in the clerical script, from the 1st to the 2nd century AD, when it started to develop, you begin to see variations in line thickness created by the use of a soft brush. As writing became faster, strokes were connected, giving rise to cursive script around the same time. And then when written with upright structure and refined brush techniques, the result is standard script and running script. I will introduce actual examples of calligraphy shortly. But here you can already see the 5 major script types: seal, clerical, cursive, standard, and running were well developed before the 4th century AD. And still in use in everyday daily life today. So that's very remarkable. Currently, the number of commonly used Chinese characters is around 3,500 in mainland China with the simplified characters, and over 4,500 in Taiwan and Hong Kong with the traditional characters. So this is okay. And Chinese writing is the longest continuously used writing system in the world. This kind of long and uninterrupted writing tradition is quite rare from a global perspective. And the earliest systematic Chinese characters that are available today are the oracle bone inscriptions from China's Shang dynasty. That's approximately 1300 BCE to 1000, and so from the 14th century to the 11th century BCE. Before this period, early Chinese humans used carved symbols, pictograms, or ideograms to convey messages. However, due to the lack of physical evidence, researchers are still unable to determine how these symbols or drawings gradually evolved into the systematic oracle bone script. Oracle bone inscriptions were used by the Shang people here to record the result of divination. These are examples from the Ram collection, and then I think that the one on the left is on display outside. Although brushes were already in use during this period, most oracle bone inscriptions were carved with fine pointed tools. So, and I think this one on the right is on display in the gallery upstairs. So you can see these are very carved into the animal bones or tortoise shells with very fine pointed tools. And around the same time, inscriptions were also, the characters on these oracle bones retain a strong pictorial quality with variations in size, shape, orientation, and even structure. For example, the characters for horse, elephant, and tiger, some of them are more elaborate, some of them are simpler, and then they can turn leftward or rightward. And around the same time, inscriptions were also found on bronze vessels, mostly on the bottom or inside the lid. For example, this vessel from the 10th century BC on the left, on display outside, these inscriptions were cast together with the vessels, resulting in very thick and rounded strokes that present an aesthetic distinct from that of oracle bone inscriptions. And many modern calligraphers are drawn to the unique beauty of these ancient scripts. They intentionally imitate them, such as the examples shown on the screen here, also outside, as a way to display their erudition. So it's you have to know a lot to be able to write in these very ancient scripts and to show their deep cultural cultivation. This has also become a distinctive form of calligraphic expression. Right. And then here we once again see the same character, Hu, tiger, appears in different scripts. And by the time we reach the cursive script stage, the one on the far right, the strokes are not only reduced, but also connected in fluid motion. As a result, the character can sometimes look drastically different from its earlier forms, to the point of being almost unrecognizable. The cursive version of this character Hu, or tiger bears little resemblance to its original pictographic form of a tiger. This cursive form also has its own distinct beauty, especially in its flowing lines, some modern calligraphers have used it as an inspiration for new creative expressions. One such example is the renowned architect and artist Chen Qikuan, who used the cursive form of Hu to create this piece outside, also displayed outside, imbued with both humor and aesthetic elegance. So you can see here, it's almost like a mirror image of this cursive writing of Hu, but then he draws a face of the tiger and also added the claws of the tiger at the end of that stroke. Okay. Around the 1st century AD, Chinese characters underwent a major transformation. At this time, paper was not yet in widespread use, so people wrote on bamboo or wooden slips. After writing, they would tie the slips together with strings or ropes. Here's an example from the 1st century. It consists of 4 sets of bindings connecting a total of 77 slips, with the wooden slips, ink marks, and binding ropes all still intact. The writers of these slips were anonymous clerks or scribes, not calligraphers or artists in modern sense of the term. However, these examples demonstrate their exceptional mastery of the soft bristle brush, skillfully varying the pressure, speed, and angle of the brush to create a wide variety of line forms. What did they use to write those characters? Those characters were written with the brushes, a writing tool with a history that can be traced back even further than those bamboo slips that we just looked at. During the late Neolithic period, in the 3rd millennium BC, soft bristle brushes were already used to create patterns on Chinese pottery, though no physical brushes from that period have been found. So the earliest physical brush artifact discovered in China dates back to around the 5th century BC. So it's this one on the screen. It's a true brush from southern China, made of bamboo with rabbit hair bristle. And then through successive generations, various types of brushes with different materials, and this one is from the 1st century AD. They were made with different materials, such as goat hairs of goat, rabbit, or horse, or Chinese minks. And then in different lengths, different sizes were developed to meet diverse writing needs. But nevertheless, the true brush from over 2,000 years ago is fundamentally similar in form to the brushes the Chinese use today, demonstrating remarkable continuity. So these are the modern brushes with different colors, because they're made of different animal hairs. This continuity is one of the defining characteristics of Chinese calligraphy. And in terms of writing postures, there are notable examples found in unearthed artifacts or depicted in historical paintings. For instance, these green porcelain, this pair of figurines depicting paired writers unearthed in Hunan in southern China show 2 individuals kneeling opposite each other, holding paper and brush in their hands. This example of writing postures differ from how we write today, seated on high chairs and leaning on desks. This posture of holding paper or silk suspended in mid-air while writing was common during the Wei and Jing period on the 4th or 5th century. High chairs and high table did not appear in China until about 9th or 10th century. So it's about 500 years after this. Okay. Here we are seeing standard script. So I'm sure most of you in the audience can recognize this script type. This is standard script. It first appeared in the 3rd century, fully matured in the 7th century, and continued to be widely used thereafter. It is written with soft bristle brushes made from animal hair and mostly on paper. This is the script that you see in printed books, signboards, and official documents today. The characters are in square or rectangular boxes, and the compositions vary with different structures. Some have 3 components, some with 2 components, some are arranged top to bottom, some are arranged left to right. So this is just the basic kind of structures. And then again, the number of commonly used characters are listed here. And also with the standard script, the most commonly used today, the basic strokes, character compositions, and structures, they're very well studied. And so these are from kind of the textbooks for school children learning calligraphy. And you see the basic strokes, how to write a horizontal, how to write a vertical, and also the structures to how to maintain the balance of a character. And then, but also you don't want it to be very boring, so you have like some of the distance between strokes are narrower, some are larger. And then, so these are from the modern period, but the Chinese developed a very rich vocabulary and ideas about how to write and structure a character. So this is from the 7th century. It's called 8 Principles of the Character Yong. It is datable to the 7th century. And it was a popular brush technique, principles in the Tang period. And with the diagram, we have these kind of principles. So like with the number 1 stroke, it's called dian, and the heng, and the shu, and tiao. And these can be, these may seem simple, but their meaning is actually quite complex. These can be translated as, so the dot, first, the dot is tilting, or ce. The horizontal is drawing or restraining, le. The vertical, recurving or exerting, nu. And the 4th, the lift, is spurring, ti. And the 5th, upper left, whipping. Number 6, the lower left, sweeping. Number 7, upper right is packing. And the number 8, the lower right, is spreading. So from these, we can see that the first word is a noun, and then followed by a description or a characterization of that noun. So for example, dian, number 1, dian, the dot, is the dot, while tilting, ce, which can refer to an action or a state of being. And then similarly, so with number 2, heng, the horizontal, is a noun. But then le, drawing or restraining, resembling the action of pulling on horse reins, is an action or a state of being. Okay, so the terminology emphasizes dynamic motion, including the action, the internal force within the movement, and the final stroke form created by the action. And also here on the left, you see all the school children, when they started to learn how to write, this teacher would make sure that they follow a certain stroke order. So from the top to the bottom, from left first and then right to to the end. And then so that's why, so with the writer, the calligrapher, and the person appreciating a piece of calligraphy, they have this common knowledge of how to start a character, where to end, and how to execute. Okay, so these 8 principles of the character Yong expresses not only the movements themselves, but also the internal force, one that is about to be released, and the final formed result. So this is a very complex sequential process. Therefore, Chinese calligraphy is an art that embodies both diachronic, as historical, and synchronic, simultaneous aspects. In other words, when appreciating a piece of calligraphy, it's not just about looking. Looking is observing passively, but also about reading and also watching, like replaying the character, how it is written in your mind. That's perceiving actively. So let's examine a concrete example of the Tang Dynasty small standard script. So this is a piece from the Metropolitan Museum. And if we analyze it using the 8 principles of the character Yong and other principles developed in the Tang period, we can find corresponding principles in nearly every stroke. Due to the smooth and compact texture of the paper, the traces of the brush and ink movements are very clear. So pauses or overlapping strokes cause ink accumulation, resulting in darker ink tones. Faster brush movements create lighter ink tones. So the phrase, like here, 侧, the 侧 resembles an hour crouching or a fallen rock. So you see like these dots, this one, the dot in the character Fei, it's like something dropping or about to drop. And then here it says, if a vertical stroke is too straight, it loses its strength. And we can look at these 4 characters. Indeed, none of the vertical strokes here are perfectly straight. Instead, they exhibit a light curvature, much like a human spine or a drawn bow, so which allows energy to be stored within the stroke. So here we have the Jia character here, the vertical stroke, and then Ling, 2 smaller, shorter strokes. And then here, Fei, very clear that this vertical stroke has this curve to it. It's very much like a human spine. And other phrases like packing should be like rise swiftly and dash forward. And then also things like let the ink gradually sink before gently lifting the brush in the opposite direction. And then we can see that here with the Ling, this final horizontal stroke, let the ink drop, sink, and then lift it upward in the opposite direction. So in terms of brush usage and stroke techniques, calligraphers had already developed a highly mature and systematic approach, spanning from practical execution to vocabulary and to conceptual understanding as early as the 7th century. Okay. So now we're on cursive script, very fast writing. Since traditional calligraphy has rigorous rules and conventions, how do calligraphers express creativity and personality? The example of wild cursive script, 狂草, might serve as a foundation for exploring this question. Around the 8th century, during the Tang Dynasty, a new form of cursive script emerged, characterized by rapid, continuous strokes, an appearance of being unrestrained by rules, and an expressive performative quality. Later generations commonly refer to it as the wild cursive or 狂草. From its inception, wild cursive script was closely associated with drunkenness and acts of madness. Later scholars viewed it as the ultimate expression of emotion and romanticism in Chinese calligraphy aesthetics. And this piece is called the Autobiographical Essay, housed in the National Palace Museum in Taipei. It's arguably the most renowned and influential 狂草 work in the calligraphy history. This work is characterized by thin yet powerful brushstrokes with continuously flowing cursive momentum. The variations in speed, dryness, and intensity create an ever-changing dynamism. As the writing progresses, it becomes more expressive, where the strokes are extremely unrestrained, like the part on the bottom. Notably, in some sections, the characters are as large as a fist, displaying extraordinary brilliance. These parts are often incorporated into various commercial products, designs today like scarves or a curtain. And interestingly, even if a viewer does not understand the content, they can still appreciate the beauty of its lines and compositions. So if we zoom in on a small section, we can see lines, the one on the left, that are very stable, fluid, and richly varied. When placed alongside another close-up detail on the right, their similar aesthetic qualities are easy to recognize. So this is, so the one on the left is from this 8th century piece of 狂草, and then the one on the right is another piece, but then this is a Western painting, but you see all these lines, and you can also almost see the action of the hand. They look very similar. The close-up detail on the right is actually from a work by American abstract expressionist artist Jackson Pollock. While it shares similar aesthetic qualities with Chinese cursive script, the underlying principles behind the two are fundamentally very different. So this is Jackson Pollock in action, doing his painting with his very famous dripping technique. He would pick up a stick and then drip the pigment on the canvas. And then you can see that the white part is the canvas, but then he has this board, larger than the canvas, and his pigment will go over the border onto the outside, okay? So Jackson Pollock, although Jackson Pollock might have a rough idea before painting, the actual process involves a great deal of randomness. And the Chinese calligraphy 狂草, or the wild cursive, appears unrestrained, seemingly not much different from a painting like this. However, not unlike the calligrapher writing here in the photos, though this is in clerical script, not in cursive script. The Chinese writing adheres to strict principles, including stroke order and specific methods for simplifying strokes into cursive script. It also follows established conventions, so writing from top to bottom, right to left, and employs traditional tools like brush, ink, and paper, and aligns with long-standing stylistic traditions. The so-called principles or laws may seem non-existent, yet they are omnipresent everywhere. Spectators, here you see someone looking as this calligrapher Fu Shen writes. Spectators actively engage in the process, being familiar with character structure and stroke order, they can anticipate the calligrapher's next move. And then when he's half done, they know that what character he's going to write. So juxtaposing Huai Su's 狂草 piece with the work of American abstract expressionist artist Jackson Pollock, it opens up many intriguing questions. The experience with calligraphy closely mirrors the appreciation of classical music, theater, or dance. These art forms adhere to strict rules and boundaries, yet it is precisely within these constraints that artists, musicians, and dancers unleash extraordinary creativity, reinterpreting classical pieces in ways that are both rich and at times entirely novel. For the audience, a deep familiarity with the underlying structure and principles combined with an awareness of technical challenges, you know this is a very difficult piece, for example, is essential when this is paired with the ability to recognize the artist's unique flair and inventive departure, that the appreciation becomes a very deeply rewarding experience. So, and then calligraphy has a very close relationship with painting in Chinese art. So we see, for example, after the 14th century, painters started to use calligraphic brushwork in their painting. And this is a piece by a 14th century very famous painter and calligrapher, Zhao Mengfu. He paints his rock using, it's like writing, like the lines in writing calligraphy. And you see the action in his hand. You can also tell the direction, the order of these, and then also the pressure he puts on these lines. And then so this is the essence of literati painting or scholar official paintings after the 14th century. And then also, we also see a lot of inscriptions, calligraphy on paintings. So here, also after the 14th century, we start to see inscriptions written on top or in the pictures. So like here, landscape, and then you have inscriptions, the poems, and the recipients' names on the painting. And then as time grows, you see more and more inscriptions. So the one on the left is from the 14th century. The one on the right is from the 15th century. The inscription takes more and more space. And then here we are going on the 15th to 16th century and then 18th century. Over time, writing gradually took up more space on the picture plane and even became part of the composition itself. So, and the shape and the aesthetic of the brushstrokes also began to echo the visual elements of the painting. So for example, the one on the far right from by the 18th century painter Jing Nong, his calligraphy and bamboo leaves echo each other. So, and also here from the 18th century, this example by Da Ba Da Shan Ren or Zhu Da, writing is not only part of the composition. So here with a she, shi, two large characters on the right, and his signature in the middle, and his seal, and then a small flower on the left. The shape, writing is not only part of the composition, it actually becomes the main subject. The flower on the left serves more like an annotation. So, and here in these two examples from the newly acquired pieces displayed outside, we can clearly see that writing or inscription is inseparable from the painting, both in terms of content and style. So on the right, you see by this painting by Zhao Shaoang, his very distinctive style of writing with these very angular strokes, and it's a little bit like the grass here, you know, the plants here, and then on the left, this one, a more reserved depiction of maybe like orchid flowers, and then the leaves, and then with a more reserved and elegant small characters of standard script. Okay, and then here, I want to talk a little bit about contemporary practices. Okay, so what do calligraphers do today? That they're faced with this very long tradition. I'll show you a few examples. Some of them are rethinking size and scale in Chinese calligraphy. So this is a piece by Dong Yangzi, a Taiwanese woman calligrapher. She was born in 1942. This was a piece that she installed in Taipei Fine Arts Museum many years ago. She worked with a designer, interior designer, and had her work mounted on this semi-circular space, and you can even walk into it. So like very large characters. And she was just received this commission by the Metropolitan Museum to create for the Great Hall. And then these are photos from the commission. So these two, the one on the left and then the one on the right, were her writings, very, very large. And then some of these modern calligraphers, they're challenging the centrality of words' meanings in calligraphy. So this is by the Chinese artist Xu Bing. Probably some of you know his work. So do you know what he writes? So this is actually his name, XU, and then BING. But then it's structured like Chinese characters. Yeah, I know, I love his work. And then so do you know what he says, like in the middle one? Can you guess? Wordplay, excellent. So that's word W-O-R-D, and then play P-L-A-Y. Yeah, isn't that smart? And then what's on the right? That's art, A-R-T. Okay, all right. And then some of the modern calligraphers, they're questioning the practice of copying. So traditional calligraphers, they have to do a lot of copying. They have to learn from so for a standard script, you have to learn from Ouyang Xun, Yu Shinan, Chu Shiliang, all these Tang masters copy and copy over and over again. And then with seal script, you have to learn from certain masters. And with cursive script, you have to know certain names, certain masters, and to master the style. So this very young artist, born in 1981, he questions this. So he's had this paper on a treadmill. And then he started to write. So no matter how hard he tries, he cannot copy this 丧乱帖 by Wang Xizhi. So there are many possible explanations, like what he's trying to convey. But then one of them, you can say that, okay, I'm using the traditional brush, traditional technique, I'm doing the traditional practice of copying, but the world is different. Everything's moving, changing, so there's no way that I can be a traditional or like adhere to the tradition. Yeah. Okay, and then some of the modern calligraphers, they're relocating the human body in writing. So this is a Japanese calligrapher. Her name is Kawao Tomoko. She was born in 1977, and this is one of her work. Okay. So you see, here's a photograph of the character Fei flying and with herself in the photo. And this is the process of her doing the work. So she would start to do the breathing technique and then to calm herself, and then started to write. So this one on the far right, she writes on a very large piece of paper with a very large brush. And then so here you see a very large brush. And then she finishes it, and then she lies down, and she had a camera mounted on top, and then she uses her iPhone to remote control the shutter, and then takes a picture of herself in the character. So and this is the final result. Okay. So when Kawao Tomoko integrates calligraphy, performance, video, and photography, placing herself within the character forms, it adds another dimension to the relationship between calligraphy and the body. So in these works of these contemporary artists, some echo and others challenge the traditions of calligraphy, which may understandably cause discomfort for some. Entering unfamiliar territory can be unsettling, but it is also where creativity and vitality burst forth. Through these responses and dialogues, we are witnessing a dynamic energy that inspires confidence in the future of calligraphy. Thank you.
Thank you so much for Professor Lu for such a rich and informative lecture. It actually makes me very nostalgic. Growing up in Taiwan, I practiced calligraphy since elementary school, up to high school, and even in college, because I study Chinese literature. We have to take a calligraphy class. It's a required course. I think I practiced more than 10 years, but I feel like I have not learned so much in one lecture about Chinese calligraphy, especially about the contemporary calligraphy. Is very thought-provoking. So now we will have 10 minutes to open the floor for questions. I'm sure you would have questions. I think some of you, probably like me, have practiced the calligraphy for years. Yeah. Oh, by the way, there will be 2 microphones on each side. So before you, if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand. They will deliver the microphone to you. Yeah. Here, this gentleman here. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the talk. I just want to ask, calligraphy in Chinese is 书法. So that means that there is a law or regulation behind it. So what's when does calligraphy become art of work, a word art, or when does art word becomes calligraphy? I mean, the distinguish between the two, calligraphy and the word play or word art.
Okay, in the longer version of my talk, I kind of summarized like 7 or 8 like principles that we can recognize characteristics of a piece of traditional calligraphy. So it includes like it should be like Chinese writing, Chinese characters, and then also like has this one-timeness, like it's an action of your body, and then also in all these 7 to 8 principles, and then I started to show these contemporary practices. So some of them that just like you can check just 1 principle or 2 or like 3, but then these are like none of them you can check all 7 or 8. So if that's the case, then do you call this calligraphy? And then these works were in a calligraphy biennial in Taiwan several years ago. And then the curator was a very good friend of mine. So he showed me the list of the artists that he invited. And at first I was really mad because like it's the first calligraphy biennial, but then half of the artists were not like calligraphers. So I said, how can you do this? This is just, and then he said, oh, calm down. Like, why don't you contribute an essay to our catalog? And then so I wrote a essay for the catalog. And then so I rethought this, like, so what counts as traditional calligraphy? Is this not calligraphy? Can calligraphy or the principles of calligraphy become like inspirations for new creations? So I take the body, the one-timeness, and then expand this to create a work. Do you allow that kind of openness to this traditional form? So and then this one, and then this. So a lot of the more traditional scholars or critics, they were not very happy with these. But I myself is very happy to see that artists are using calligraphy as an inspiration. Yeah, so that might not, perfectly answer your question. I don't think there's a line that say, this is calligraphy, this is not calligraphy. Yeah.
Hello. Oh. Okay. Hi there. 大家好 and 中兴兄弟加油. So I wanted to mention that I want to ask about the use of calligraphy in places like Taiwan and Hokkaido for indigenous languages and peoples that don't have a tradition of using Chinese characters in their native languages, but which had languages that do use it imposed on them through Japanese and ROC colonialism. In recent years, both the Ainu and Hokkaido and also people like the Amis in southeastern Taiwan have had efforts to try to assert their languages and cultures. But I would be concerned, because most of those languages are written either with Roman scripts, or in the case of Ainu, it can be written with a form of katakana. But nonetheless, I mean, as shown earlier, there's one of the pieces where it was actually Roman characters, but they were drawn in a way to almost look like a Chinese block. So almost like the way Hangul is created and so forth, where it still looks like a Chinese block, but it's not, it's still Korean. So I'm just curious as to your own experience in Taiwan, or if you had a chance to go to Hokkaido, can you speak to how the Yuan Zhumin peoples and so forth have been brought into this conversation so that they can actually contribute to these disciplines in a way that is not colonial, in the sense that they're basically having to speak it using Mandarin or Japanese in either case, or that they can still express their own languages and their own viewpoints in a shared way that's not a colonial way, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is more about writing system, not specifically about calligraphy. Or like in Taiwan, now schools are teaching the Taiwanese dialect. It was the Chinese dialect, the Taiwanese or Southern Fukienese, but then. So it's being taught at school, so then you need textbooks. How do you write these things down? So there are different systems of recording or writing down Fukienese, Taiwanese. And I think that's the same kind of question that you're raising about these indigenous languages, and then they didn't have a writing system of their own, and they're borrowing Romanized letters or writings. I don't have a good answer for that. I think it's about writing system. It's not specifically about calligraphy. I don't know how to, yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Professor. I have a quick question about, this is calligraphy for Chinese. I was just wondering if you are looking at the comparison between Chinese calligraphy versus English calligraphy or Arabic calligraphy, different languages. How do you see these different languages, using these two-dimensional aspects of writing?
Well, so calligraphy is an English word. So we use it to talk about Chinese 书法, or in Japanese 书道. So calligraphy means beautiful writing, and we do have English calligraphy. But then I think with the Chinese brush, the soft brush, it has a great potential for expression. It's more than these other tools that you use in English calligraphy. So it's more expressive. And then for calligraphy in Western culture, it's more about design, the shapes, and then how it fits into the other parts of the design, the graphic part. But then for Chinese calligraphy, it's also about sometimes the artist would compose a poem himself and then writes and then in a certain ancient style to be a statement. So it's everything. It's reading, it's literature, and then also it's art. And then so I think it's richer. It's richer in and also, it's a very long tradition. You have all these early masters and models. So when you pick certain early models, it's a statement of your personal. Yeah. So I think it's different. And with Arabic writings, so for the exhibition that's going to open this fall of the women calligraphers in Taiwan that I'm curating, so I also invited. It's a Pakistani woman calligrapher working in London, based in London, and she also she's dealing with the body, so the lines and its affiliation, the connections with human body. So I invited her. Just there's something that echoing in Chinese calligraphy. So in that sense, there's something that you can make connections, but not they are from very different traditions.
Hi, Professor. So my question is just like the Chinese ink paintings. I happen to know like some of the most famous work in calligraphy, like 上乱帖 or 祭子文稿, they all like under some emotional reaction to certain like loss or very sad this event. I just wonder in the history, like most of the greatest calligraphy works fall into that category, like reaction to certain events, or they're more like hobbies, like literary hobbies, or more like commissioned by emperors or their clients?
Okay, so writing calligraphy, they're in a lot of different uses. So they have their different forms and different styles. But like in calligraphy history, so the so-called three greatest pieces. The first one is Lan Ting Xu, the preface to Orchid Pavilion by Wang Xizhi. And the second, the eulogy for my dead nephew, that's by Yan Zhenqing. And the third one is the two poems written by Su Dongpo. So these are all kind of, they have this quality of an unfinished draft. So it's like this emotion or in it. And then so it looks unfinished, or you have all these corrections, deletions in it. So why is it a good piece of writing? So this leads to a very important questions that I often discuss in class. What counts as a great piece of calligraphy? And then I often draw comparisons with figure skating. So in figure skating, you have the technical merits and then the expression, right? And then so in calligraphy, that's the same. Some of the 小楷, the standards are really hard. So you have the technical points very high, but then with these drafts, the technical parts, because he's writing in a very fast speed and then, in very disordered emotion. And then so the technical merits, maybe it's lower, but then you have these very expressive points, very high. But in general, the Chinese preferred the expressive part. They would put more emphasis on that. And then so, that's, the three greatest pieces, they're all either drafts or letters, not very standard or fixed pieces of work.
Because of time concerns, I'll take one last question. Here, that gentleman on the back.
Hi, my question is, has there been any great works in the contemporary era in the strict traditional sense of calligraphy? Because the ones that you showed are pretty conceptual. So has there been, great practitioners strictly in the traditional sense of calligraphy recently?
Yes. Where is it? So I would say, this calligrapher on the left, Fu Shen, he's one of the most respected calligraphers in the traditional style in our time. He just passed away last year, and so he was able to practice in writing clerical script, seal script, all script types, and then with very high quality, high technique. So there are many of these, and then you do see them. There are still competitions or exhibitions of calligraphy in Taiwan and China that merits the traditional techniques and styles. Yeah.
Thank you so much for Professor Lu's wonderful talk and answering all the questions. Now we'll have Dr. Shen back to the stage to do a closing remark.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lu, for your wonderful talks, illuminating, and in a very good way, you reminded me of my third grade teachers who taught me the calligraphy is the 8th principle, and I don't think I made her proud. So, but I honor you that in this way. Anyway, also I'd like to thank Win Chen for facilitating and inviting Professor Wang to such a wonderful opportunity for the Ram's audience, because I remember in my office, Dr. Zhen rushed to my office and say, Professor Lu's here in North America, can we just bring her to the Toronto? I'll say, okay, let's do that. So it is a very short lead time. And I'm really surprised and really, pleased to see all of you here tonight in this reading nights and to support our program, to listen to this wonderful talk. So thank you very much, everyone, for giving yourself a wonderful proud. So thank you. As I said earlier, a special treat that a few of the RAM staff working very late tonight brought a selection of our newly acquired Chinese calligraphy collections, especially for Professor Huang's family collection. And we are very fortunate to have your families here with us. So please, and to say hi on behalf of the RAM, I thank you, your generous donation. So thank you. So our installation just outside of this door. When you're walking out, please enjoy the rest of the night, and I hope you have enjoyed your time with us. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope I see you again in the next program. Thank you.